continue on the second parak.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. So we begin the second parak. Okay. Now it's interesting how again we discussed the crowds and the pushing of crowds, and we have something similar in today's daf, all about that. So let us begin. Barishayna, in the beginning, kol mi sheroitza litroim es hamizbeach torem. Any kohen that wanted to have the job, which started, we learned about the trumas hadeshin, which was the avoida that started. Usually you did it like 3 a.m, taking a little ashes off the mizbeach and putting it on the side of the mizbeach. That's a mitzvah of trumas hadeshin. And there were many kahanim in the Beis Hamikdash, and they were broken down into different families. So anybody from the family that wanted to show up and do the job of the avodah of separating and do the trumas hadeshin on the mizbeach, Torah, he just showed up at 3 a.m. and says, I want to do it. Ubizman shehein merubin. And let's say at a time one person showed up. There was many people that showed up. So how did they decide who gets to do the job? So the Mishnah says, Ratzin v'oilim bakevish. They had a race, and they ran up the ramp. They ran up the ramp of the Mizbeach, as you're familiar with the ramp of the Mizbeach, over here. And they ran up, and whoever, kol hakoidim es hachavera ba'arba amas, whoever got there before their friend, he reached 4 amas from the top of the Mizbeach, Zocha, he wins the race and he gets the job. So the job was given to the most athletically fit kohen who ran the race up the ramp. I will point out to you that there is no steps going up to the Mizbeach, because the Torah says don't create steps to go to the Mizbeach. It had to be a ramp. So this ramp was the basis of races between the Kahanim to get there have the merit to do the job of Trumas Hadeshin. What happens? Vim hoyeshneim shavim. Let's say two people tied the race and they were both equal. So then, how do you decide who gets it? So then, once there was a tie, they brought everybody back. The tie wasn't between the two people. They had to make a lottery, like a count between all the members. So listen to this. Hamamuna oimelehem. Let's read it. Let's see the picture, so it's much easier. The picture was this. You see this picture? Basically, there's a guy in the middle, and he has all these kahanim surrounding him. Now notice this guy is without a hat. So everybody puts out one finger, and the guy in the middle calls out a number. Let's say he calls out the number 275. So he starts from the guy without the hat, and then he keeps counting and counting until he reaches the number 275. Presumably, the guy in the middle is not great in math, so he wouldn't be able to figure out that odd number, that who it's going to land on. And everybody put out only one finger, so you counted only one time. Only one time, and that's how they did this lottery. This is this whole Rashi over here. Hamumuna oimelem hatzbi'u. Stick out your finger. Umahe matziyem. Why? What would they stick out? Achas. Generally, they've stuck out one finger. But oishtayim. Sometimes you have to stick out 2 fingers. If one kohen broke his finger, so he could stick out 2 fingers. Obviously, it was counted as one, but they gave permission to give out 2 fingers. But under no circumstances, the ein metzin agudol b'mikdash. You're not allowed to stick your thumb out in the Beis Hamikdash, for the obvious reason, because if you see that they're getting up to your number, and the guy next to you is going to win the lottery, win this counting. So what they did was he's going to stick out his thumb, so that's counted as one, and then he stick out his pinky as the other one, or something like that. So or a regular index finger, and the guy doing the counting is not going to realize he's counting one person twice. That was done in case there was a tie. Okay, in case there was a tie. Now says the Mishnah, a fascinating thing. Maisa shahoya shneim shavim. Maisa, there was a story. Shahoya shneim shavim. There were 2 people running the race, and they tied on the race. The Rotzin, and they ran up, Boilim Bakevish, they ran up the ramp. And look what happened. A stampede. One man pushed his friend off the ramp. And it broke, and he fell off the whole ramp, and he broke his foot. The race, I guess he played dirty. So the cave and Shiro Bezdin saw Shaboin L'dei Sakana. That Bezdin was that this was coming to a dangerous. In fact, the Gemara is going to say one guy on his way in the race stabbed another guy and killed him. So this was leading to a big dangerous situation, having races at 3:00 in the morning to get this job. Hiskinu, they made a new rule. They only had a lottery. The kind of lottery that you saw. That lottery occurred, and they made that lottery in the Beis Hamikdash. Now I'm pointing out to you that that lottery was too low of a jackpot to win. In other words, to get the Trumas Hadeshin. They combined that win. If you won that first lottery, you got to do 3 other jobs. Maracha jobs, setting up the fire on the Mizbeach and bringing the wood. So it wasn't just that job you got. That was in order to entice people to show up for that lottery. And we're going to read more about that in the Gemara. But
I find it disappointing that these are the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash, and they were doing stuff that we would consider now to be incredibly dishonest. And we're talking about thousands of years ago and the cream of the crop. And they were stabbing and pushing. And these are the people that are going to do service to take away our Averas.
Right. So sometimes the religious fervor gets in the way of common sense. It's not to be understood, but the Mishnah and the Gemara is going to describe even more detail what stories happened here. You're right. You think you were doing a holy thing, and you would never think of throwing somebody off the ramp. I mind you, it's a pretty big fall from that. It's about 20 feet, right? It's 10 amas high. So if you get thrown off that ramp, you're falling 20 feet. The Mishnah says, Abba Payasus HaYisham. They got together, the Kahanim, 4 times a day to do a lottery. This was the first lottery to decide who does Trumas Hadeshin and a few other things which we're going to learn. But 4 times they got together. They didn't decide the service of the day by making the lotteries at one time. They wanted the Kahanim to gather together 4 times for different lotteries at different times. Because it's like more of a covet for the Beis Hamikdash if you're getting together at 4 different times during the day, than to get together one time and get it all set up, get it out of the way. So 4 times they had to get together. Some in Shulchan Aruch want to learn that if it's possible for a person to daven mincha and then go later to daven marav, that's better than davening a mincha marav at one shot, because there's a hadras, there's a hadra for the king that you come together once and then you break up and then you come back again. But sometimes it's not possible for the Tircha the Tzibur. But it's brought in Shulchan Aruch from this Mishnah. Now the investigation. The Gemara is like the probe of the investigation of how did they even let this come to a situation. From the very beginning, from the very beginning, why didn't the Rabbanim decide to make a lottery? Isn't that the most sensible thing? Why did they make it in a race? So the Gemara says, Mi'ikara Savar, in the very beginning we thought, Kevan da avoidis lailahi, since the service of Trumas Hadeshin is a service that's done at night, it starts at 3:00 in the morning, and sometimes even at 12:00 at night. Loi chashivalu, it doesn't have such significance. V'loi asu, and people are not going to come. Only a few people are going to come, and then one guy's going to say, you do it. So it was not. They didn't imagine that people are going to come. Since they saw that people were coming, and this would come to a danger, right? Then takinu le payasa, and then they were basakin they established a lottery. So the Gemara asks, wait a second. There's a service another service that was done at night. After they brought the Talmud Shel Bein Harabayim, the afternoon Talmud, there was a service at night for somebody to have to stay up and put all the meat that's on the Mizbeach into the fire. And he had to stay there till midnight to make sure that none of the meat moved away from the fire, because if it moved away from the fire prior to midnight, he had to put it back. And nevertheless, for that service, for the right to do that service, the Rabbanim said a lottery. And you just told me that anything that's done at night, people don't apply chashivas to it. They don't think it's so significant. So why did they establish a lottery for the other service that was done at night, putting the Abiram Upadarm, the fats and the limbs, on the Mizbeach? And for the Gemara, Soif Avoida the Yamamahi. That is the end of service that was done in the day, because that represents the end of a service of the carbon that was brought during the daytime. So they're doing the end part at night, so people did establish, said they still tied significance to that service. So the Gemara asks back, wait a second, Hainami Tchilas Avoidus the Yamamahi. That service of Trumas Hadeshin done at 3 a.m, that could be considered the start of service that's during the daytime. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Kiddush Yodov L'Trumas Hadeshin. If somebody was sanctified his hands through the waters of the kiyur, you had to wash your hands and feet from the kiyur every day before you started to do the service. If you did it for the Trumas Hadeshin, if you did it to do the job of separating the ashes, L'Machar, after the next day, in other words, when sunrise came, Ein Tzarech L'Kadish, you don't have to make a new Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Why, says Rabbi Yochanan? Shekvar Kiddush Metchilas Avoida. That's considered the start of Avoida of the daytime. So we see that Trumas Hadeshin, the way Rabbi Yochanan words it, is a service that's connected to the daytime. So why then wouldn't people consider it so important? The answer is, Ema, no. You have to change around Rabbi Yochanan's word. What he meant to say is, Shekavar Kiddush Metchila Avoida. The reason why that if you wash your hands for Trumas Hadeshin, it's because you did a service already. Not that you did the daytime service, you did a nighttime service. And if you're doing that nighttime service, you don't have to rewash your hands for the daytime service. You could. It still counts. Just because you did the Kiddush Yadayim Raglaim at night, since it's so close to the morning, it's effective for a service that you're going to do during the day. Okay? But, so what's the bottom line of this teretz is? The bottom line is, the beginning, what did we investigate? Why didn't they establish a lottery from the very beginning? Very simple. Because they thought that since this service is a nighttime service, most Kohanim are going to deem it as unimportant. And therefore, they're not going to show up, they're not going to come. But now that they saw that people are starting to show up, right, and it's really only a service that's done at night, that's why they established the lottery. So that's the first teretz. Ika de Amri, others say, what mi'ikara sava, the original thought was, kevin the Ika oinish shena, since there was, it's a 3 o'clock in the morning service, right before Aloy Shaka. People are going to be sleeping. It's not like they don't consider it important, but they consider it, they're sleeping, so it's very difficult for them to get out of bed. They thought, loy honest, that's why people are not coming. Not because they don't think it's important, it's just hard to get up so early in the morning. But people were coming, came in the chazid the asu, since they saw people are showing up for the lottery, for that service, the ka'asin nami l'deisakana, and again, it became to a dangerous situation. Taknidule Rabbanan payasa, so Rabbanan established a lottery. So the Gemara asks, wait a second, the concept of putting the limbs on the Mizbeach, it's a nighttime job. It's a job that lasts till midnight. The Ika Oidashena, it's a oinus of you'd rather go to sleep than to stay up till midnight. And nevertheless, people were staying up for that. But Tekini Le Rabbanan Payasa, right away from the very beginning, it was never a race. Right away, the Rabbanan established a lottery. So why is it by Trumas Hadeshin they didn't establish a lottery from the very beginning? Both of them have this concept of people would rather be sleeping. Answers the Gemara, Sha'ani migna mimekam. There's a big difference between staying up at night than getting up in the morning. a person finds it easier to stay up at night. Once they're up already, they'll push themselves to stay up till midnight. So people wanted to do the job of Aver B'Darim, because all that entailed was that you stay up a little longer to get that job. But getting up early in the morning, which once you're sleeping already, despite the fact that you slept a night, 6 hours already, if you went to sleep early, still it's very hard to get up so early in the morning. So they thought that people are not gonna show up. They once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, we're staying up Shavuos at night. Why do we stay up Shavuos at night? Is because the Jewish people didn't get up early in the morning on Shavuos morning, and God showed up to Har Sinai before the Jewish people came to Har Sinai. So to make up for that boo-boo, we actually stay up a whole night. And so they asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, maybe the idea would have been better if you have people just go to sleep early Shavuos night and wake up early Shavuos morning, because that's the tikkun. The Aveira was, we didn't get up early, so let's go to sleep early Shavuos night and then wake up very early to make up for that. That should have been the minhag. And he answered from this Gemara, because people find it's much more difficult for people to get up very early in the morning than to stay up late at night. At least staying up late at night, you'll have more of a chance that more people are going to do the minhag than getting up very early in the morning. Anyway, so we said that the reason is because of the danger. That's why they said the pious. So the Gemara says, "V'tekanta mahaygisa, v'tekanta lahakisa hava." Was it because of this reason? Tekanta lahakisa hava. The reason why they made a lottery is not because of the dangerous situation. There was another reason why they made a lottery, because the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Misha Zocha Betrumas Hadeshin, the one that won the Trumas Hadeshin lottery, Zocha Besidir Marocha, he had the schus to set up the bonfire on the Mizbeach, setting up the woods on the Mizbeach, Uvishnei Gezire Eitzim, and he had the schus to bring the extra 2 woods onto the Mizbeach. There was a special service, but after you're setting up the fire, to bring up special wood, 2 pieces of special wood, and put that on the Mizbeach. So it wasn't a one-time lottery. You actually got 2 other things into that lottery. So they had to make a lottery for the Marocha and the Shnei Gezire Eitzim. So Trumas Hadeshin had to join into that lottery, not because of a sakana. So the Gemara says, this is the final answer and how the whole situation worked out. Amar Rav Ashi explained, Shtei Tekanos Hayu. There were two rules. There were 2 establishments that they made. They tried to fix the situation in 2 ways. In the beginning, they thought nobody's showing up because it's a nighttime service. Nobody's going to come. Fine. So they made the race. Then they saw a lot of people are coming. And it's coming to a dangerous, the fighting. Then they established a lottery. Now that it was a lottery, nobody showed up. Kaven that the once they established a lottery, loyasa, they didn't come. Because the chances of winning just one service, it doesn't pay to wake up 3 in the morning in other words, the jackpot is too low. And nobody was coming just because it was a lottery. There's Umrah, they said to themselves, Mi Yema de Bisramilam, who says I'm going to win the lottery? So why should I show up to a chance to do Trumas Hadeshin at 3 in the morning? I'm better off sleeping. So therefore, to increase the interest of people coming, they made the lottery a triple lottery. That if you won the Trumas Hadeshin lottery, you won 2 other things with it. Whoever wins the lottery of Trumas Hadeshin, he got the schos to Siddur Hamaracha, to set up the fire on the Mizbeach, and to bring the 2 special woods on the Mizbeach. And they did it. So people should show up to the Mizbeach. So people should show up to the lottery. So that's how it worked. Now, Rav Papa, we're just going to add one more piece, and then it goes into a little agadata. Basically, this is a picture of the Mizbeach, right? A picture of the Mizbeach. Now notice the ramp, the Mizbeach actually has a gap of an amma. It narrowed on the amma. as you went up the Mizbeach, it narrowed by an amma and then another amma. And here you see it better. Let me just get a nicer picture. A picture over here. You see, it got narrower because of the Yesod and the Soivev. So it got narrower. Now, Rav Papa wants to know, in this case, is where does the race end? Where would the race end? Here's the picture. Hold on. Let me just get it centered. No, I got to back it up a little bit. Let me just, sorry. Okay, here's the picture. Rav Papa wants to know is where would the race end? Well, here's the top of the Mizbeach, here's the wood, the fire, and everything like that. So when they had the race, in the original, did the guy have to win to get to the Dalat Amos right before the top of the Mizbeach? So he had to win, he had to reach the first dotted line over here, right over here, this where my cursor is. He had to win that Dalat Amos. Or, technically, one could argue that the ramp on the ground of the Mizbeach, on the ground of the Azara, only reached over here because you had the foundation and a soivev, which made a gap between the Mizbeach. So there was like a groove over here, and in that case, you backed off, you add another 2 amas for these 2 amas, the soivev and the Yesod. So the winner of the race had to just get in within 6 amas of the roof of the Mizbeach, because you distance 2 amas off the top to where the actual ramp touches the floor, and then you had to be within that 4 amas. So in other words, you're 6 amas from the top of the Mizbeach. So that was the question. So let's go back into the Gemara. Gemara says, Amar Apatma, Pshitali, that the race was Arba Amas to Araloi. If the race wasn't, what was the race? You had to get to the ramp? That couldn't be, because it says, Rotza v'oilim b'kevish tana. They had to run and get to the top of the ramp. Kamai sanami loy, and you didn't have, you can't say that the race ended in the first 4 amas of the Mizbeach, of the ramp, because it says, Rotza v'oilim b'kevish tana. That the race was that you had to run up to the top of the ramp, and then the Mishnah says, whoever reached the 4 amas from the Mizbeach wins the race. The race didn't end in middle of the ramp, because there's no demarcation to say where would the race end. So pshitali, the gabe Mizbeach tanan. So it must be the race was till the top of the Mizbeach. So that's simple. That is very simple, that you had to reach the top of Mizbeach. Now comes the question, is Boira Papa. Arba Amish Amru, when they said that you have to come within 4 amas of striking distance to the top of the Mizbeach, does that include Bahama, Bahada, Amma Yesoid, Va'ama Soiviv? Does that include the Amma Yesoid and the Amma Soiviv? So you had to mamish get up until 4 amas to the top of the Mizbeach, like I showed you. Or Dilma, or maybe Bar Ma'ama Yesoid, Ma'ama Mizbeach. Besides that, in other words, the race ended 2 amas away from the top of the Mizbeach, and that's when you start counting 4 amas. So actually, to win the race, you had to be 6 amas from the literal top of the Mizbeach, because the ramp actually did not go to the top of the Mizbeach, it grooved upwards. So it didn't actually, the actual ramp on the floor of the Azara was 6 amas away from the top of it was 2 amas away from the top of the Mizbeach. So in other words, to win, you had to get within 4 amas. So that was total of 6 amas from the top of the Mizbeach. Teku, the Gemara remains with a question. Now, one thing to think about is why did Rav Papa ask such a question? If the race ended over here, or if the race ended over here, what's the nafkamina? I mean, this was an old-time custom where they had races. What was the nafkamina? So I'll tell you another time, but because of time, we'll just move on. But that's something to think about. If 2 people won the race, then they said, stick out your finger. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, I'd see you as by Seichan Laminion. They stuck out the fingers to make the counting. So now the Gemara asks the obvious question: why did they have to stick out and count fingers? V'nimnihu lididhu. count the bodies. Count this. You are 1, 2, 3, 4. Why do you have to count fingers? So Messiah lay Rabbi Yitzchak. This is a proof to what the statement Rabbi Yitzchak said. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Asa libnois Yisrael." One is not allowed to count Jewish people. Afilu devar mitzvah. Even if you're doing it for a devar mitzvah, like over here, you're trying to decide who's doing the Trumas Hadeshen. You're not allowed to count Jewish people, and because of an ayin hara, it leads to an ayin hara if you make a number. So the ksiv, and you sign this concept, vayifkedeim babozek. They counted them babozek. And this is the time that Shaul HaMelech, when he first began his kingdom, he wanted to make a counting of the Jewish people for his army. So he counted not the Jewish people themselves, but he asked everybody to drop a piece of little piece of a earthenware pottery into a basket, and they counted up the little pieces of pottery, and then they knew how many Jewish people there were in his army. So he counted it not by counting bodies, but by counting pieces of pottery. So that's the question. Now, one could ask me, and I know what you're thinking. Okay, but how come in our Mishnah we're not counting the bodies, but we're actually counting fingers? What's the difference between counting a finger and counting? That should also be asur. Counting fingers should be asur. The answer is the counting of a person. If you're counting, you're actually looking in their eyes and you're looking in their face, and that's the way to give the ayin hara. But if you just count looking at his fingers, the Gemara understands that is not an ayin hara, and therefore there was no problem with doing that method. So the Gemara just does some housekeeping. How do you know that Shaul HaMelech counted using bezek, which is earthenware, shattered earthenwares? Maskela Rav Ashi asked a question, how do you know that the bezek is a shattered shards? Dilma Shma Damasahu. Maybe it means he counted them in the city called Bezek. And we find that there's a city called Bezek. There's a telephone company called Bezek. So he found them, Adoni Bezek found them. Elamahacha, we find it in another place. Shaul HaMelech did accounting. He used Vaishama Shaul Sa'am. He made a proclamation, Vayifgedeim Batloim, and he counted them with sheep. When Shaul HaMelech wanted to count the Jewish people at a different time in his kingdom, he actually told the people, take a sheep from my pen. Shaul owned the sheep. And he says, take the sheep and then come to the counters and bring back the sheep. And that's how he counted the people. So we see clearly that they were avoiding counting individuals.
Didn't we learn this from half a shekel?
Right. So there it's an advice. Right. It's an advice that you should. Why did we learn that from the half a shekel? That the kisisa v'layu ben negach b'fkaidaisam. So I might have thought that it wasn't a davar mitzvah. You see, I think the key over here is that's a great question. In the Chumash it says, let's just find out how many Jews are around. But what davar mitzvah was there? So maybe over there it would be asur. But here, it's a dvar mitzvah. We're trying to figure out who's going to do the service in the Beis HaMikdash. Or in Shaul Melech's case, who's going to go to who's counting the army to go to war. So, and a mechemes mitzvah. So I might think that the Chumash does not apply. We still that even for a dvar mitzvah is asur to do that. Back into the Gemara, Amar Ablaza, Kol Amoines Yisrael Ave Belav. Whoever counts Jewish people, you get a lav. It's also not really a lav. It's again from the Tanakh. The Tanakh says, the Jewish people are still going to be so numerous, and there's going to be a way, they'll have a number, but you're not allowed to measure them. So it says, lo yimad. Rav Nachman Amar by Yitzchak Amar, oive b'shnei lavin. You get 2 lavin from the Tanakh. Again, this is not Chumash, this is Tanakh. It says, lo yimad v'lo yisofa. The end of the pasuk says, the Jewish people will have a number, like the sand of the sea, that you will never be able to measure them or count them. So it gives 2 lashonis. So according to Rav Nachman Yitzchak, you get 2, so to speak, lavim, if you count Jewish people. But Amar Rab Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Rabbi Yonason Rami, Rabbi Yonason acts actually a contradiction. He says, Ksiv v'hoya mispamnei so k'chol hayon. There's a pasuk that says Jewish people are going to be numerous like the sands of the sea, that you won't be able to count, that will have a number, that you will be able to count them. And then the pasuk says you won't be able to measure them and you won't be able to count them. You see, Rabbi Yonason does not learn that there's an isser to count Yisrael. He learns that the Torah is telling you that the Jews are going to be so numerous that you won't be able to count them, because physically it won't be able to count them because they're going to be so numerous. How is it possible? How do you resolve the contradiction? Could you count the Jewish people? I mean, and this is all in the future. In the future, the Jewish people are going to be so numerous that you won't be able to count them. And then it says you could be able to count them. They'll have a number. So Tloikasha is not difficult. When won't you be able to count the Jewish people? If they're doing the will of God, then every Jew could be worth more than one person. You find that Moshe Rabbeinu is worth like 600,000 people, right? You find that in the Chumash a lot. The juxtaposed Moshe and Kol Yisrael. So every Jew is going to be worth much more when they do the will of God. When will you be able to count the Jewish people? And they have a finite number. When they don't do the will of Hashem. So then every Jew is counted as one. You could be able to count them. Rabbi Aimer b'shum ba'aba ben stoy loikash. It's not difficult. Kam b'dei odom. A human will not be able to count them because they're going to be so numerous. One pasuk is talking about b'dei shemayim. In shemayim, they'll know the amount of numbers there are. Like they, right? Like moina mispar like a chavan. God knows the number, even though technically and physically we won't be able to count them. Now, nu Gemara. Amar Rav Ne'eloi bar Idi, Amar Shmuel, Kevin Shnismana Odem Parnas Alatziba. If a guy comes to become the president of the shul, okay, let's say you become king, right? You're Rosh Hakol, Mis Asher, it's a schooler to become wealthy. Why? You see that from Shaul Melech. Mi Kara Ksiv, in the beginning it says, Vayifkedei Babozek, that he counted the people with shards of pottery. And then it says later on in Shaul's kingdom, he was able to count the numerous Jewish people with sheep. So the Gemara says, who said the sheep belonged to Shaul HaMelech? Maybe the sheep belonged to the Jewish people. So the Gemara answers back in Kemai Rus Milsa. What is the Chumash telling me that? What is the Tanakh telling me that he counted with the people sheep? It was Shaul HaMelech's sheep. And basically what the Gemara is saying is Shaul was so rich that he told the people, everybody come to my pen, take a sheep, and then you come to the census counter and we'll count you. So therefore, we see that Shaul HaMelech started off not so rich, and as he progressed in his kingdom, he became very wealthy. Again, it's an idea is that that these people were not to be bribable, and that's why wealth was very important for somebody who's a parnas al tzibur. Then the pasuk says, now we talk about Shaul HaMelech a little bit. Vayara banocha. He had a debate against God. God told him to kill out Amalek, kill out all the men, women, and children, and the animals. And Shaul HaMelech did not want to kill the animals because he felt he could use them as sacrifice, as to ask forgiveness for killing children. And that's what he let the animals live. And that was a big avera. He should have listened to Hashem. Amar Amori al iskei nacha. What was Shaul HaMelech having a debate? When God said to Shaul, Lech v'kisas Amalek, go kill out the whole Amalek, men, women, children, babies, and animals. Omar, he said, Ma nefesh achas omer Torah havei eglal rufa. The Torah says if you kill one person and you don't know, you have to do the whole service of eglal rufa, where you bring a calf and they chop off his head, and the elders of the city wash their hands over the dead calf, and they say, we don't know why this person died. This is the Torah talks about the Egla Rufa case where you find a dead body next to one of the cities and you don't know who the murderer is. Everybody needs a kapara. Kol and afoshes alolu. I'm killing out all this whole nation of Amalek, alachas kama v'kama. Certainly, I'm going to need a kapara. If I'm killing out the adult males, why should I kill out the animals? Why should I kill out the animals? If I kill out just the older Amalekim, what did the babies do? What did the young children? Why should I kill them out? He killed out the babies. He killed out the Gedolim. But he left the animals, and he left a few animals so he could be able to bring karbonos, and that was a mistake. Yotza Baskol, the voice from heaven said, you're making a mistake. Al ti tzadik harbi. Don't be too righteous. Don't show mercy. You don't have to feel guilty that you killed out the nation of Amalek. Because if eventually a person who's so liberal and has mercy on Rishoyim, the opposite happens. You'll become cruel. You'll become cruel against righteous people. Because look what happened. When Shaul HaMelech said to Doeg, again, Shaul HaMelech was chasing David HaMelech, and he was paranoid that he knew that David HaMelech was going to take over the kingdom, and he wanted to kill David. So David ran away to this place called Noiv Ir HaKahanim, and he was starving, and he asked for food, and they gave him shelter, and they asked something from the Urim V'Tumim. And Doeg, who Adomi, told Shaul HaMelech what the city of Noiv Ir HaKahanim did, providing refuge for David, who was on the lam. So Shaul told Doeg, Soiv ato pagab kahanim, I want you to go and kill out all the kahanim of that city of Noiv. It was a big avera, and all the kahanim were killed out. Yotzus of Baskel, the Omroloi, and a voice from heaven came out and said, Al tir shaharba, don't be so cruel. Again, Shaul HaMelech showed two opposite virtues. He was very compassionate, felt very guilty, and then he could show extreme cruelty on the other side. Amar Rav Huna, we're going to just go to the red over here. Amar Rav Huna said, sometimes a person doesn't that how unlucky he is if you don't have the siyata d'shmaya. You need a siyata d'shmaya to be able, that after you do a big avera, to be able to get forgiveness. Shaul did ba'achas. He did one avera, v'olsoloi, and it destroyed him. Basically, because he did one avera, he didn't have the siyata d'shmaya to do tshuva, and therefore he lost his kingdom. David b'shtayim, David HaMelech did two averas, v'loi olsoloi, and didn't lose his kingdom. Shaul ba'achas mahi, what was the one thing that Shaul HaMelech did? Ma'aseh Agag, the story of Agag, where he left Agag, the king of Amalek, alive with the animals. So that caused him to lose the Melucha. So the Gemara asked, what do you mean? We have the story where Shaul HaMelech instructed Doeg to kill out the whole city of Kahanim, of Noiv, the city of Kahanim. That should also be counted as a big avera that Shaul lost his kingdom. No. Ma'aseh Agag said, it's the real Ma'aseh of Agag, that really was the one that made him lose the kingdom. Because the Pasuk says, God tells Shmuel Hanavi, Nichamti ki imlachti Shaul HaMelech. Right then and there, God says, I regret it that I crowned Shaul to be the king. So right then and there, the Noiv HaKahanim was another Avera, but to lose the Melucha, that was because of the story of Agag. David b'shtayim, David did two Averas, and still he remained king. Maninu, what was the king? What was the two Averas that David did? The Uriah. In other words, David HaMelech, as the Tanakh says so, fell for Uriah's wife. Uriah was out in battle, and he saw Uriah's wife, Bathsheba, and he, so to speak, was mizana with her. We'll see that with an Ashes Ish. That's what the Tanakh describes it. And then Uriah comes back. So, and David HaMelech actually impregnated Bathsheba, and this is a big problem. So what did he do? He instructed that Uriah should be brought to the front lines to get killed in war, and therefore that will enable him to, hide the whole thing, and he'll marry Bathsheba, and people will think that the child came after the marriage, and that was a big avera because he caused Uriah's death with the hasasa. And also, he was enticed to count the Jewish people. The Tanakh describes that David counted the Jewish people individually without using any indirect method, but individually, and that brought about a plague. So the Gemara asks, wasn't there the story of Bathsheba? Wasn't the story of Bathsheba that he actually had relations with a married woman? So the Gemara says, right. But he did three averas. The Ma'aseh of Bathsheba was another avera. Hasem iparimine, he got paid back from it. The ksiv eskifta yishalem arbatayim, that David HaMelech said, I should get paid back 4 times the avera that he did with this nus with Bathsheba, and he got paid back. Yeled, he lost a child. Amnon, he had another child, Amnon, that was killed by his brother Avshalom. And then he had his son Tamar, a daughter Tamar that was raped by Amnon, and Avshalom was killed. So he had 4 children that 3 of them died, and Tamar was raped. So he got his punishment for that. Hosam nami ipari nami hosam nami ipari minei. Diksev vayitin Hashem deva be'ad eis boyed. So there by the Magefa, Vahasasa, he was never paid. He was paid back because thousands of people lost their lives. So how could you say that this sort of caused him to lose the Malucha? He got paid back. He got punished for it. So the Gemara answers the Gemara. He wasn't punished in his guf. He personally wasn't punished. Hasam lo yipare megufe. He personally was not punished with it. So the Gemara said, Hasam nami lo yipari megufa. Over there also, when he lost his children, that's not a punishment on his body. So again, what the Gemara is trying to say is that there's actually three Averas that, so to speak, David HaMelech got away with. Uriah, Hasat, and Bathsheba. He personally did not get punished with it. The answer is, la'ai. The truth is, yipari megufa. David also got punished in his body because he got sick after the story of Bathsheba. David got sick with tzaras after the story of Bathsheba. The Sanhedrin left David HaMelech and the Shechina left him. There's psukim in Tehillim where David is praying, I want everybody back. I'm in quarantine over here. I can't meet with people because I have tzaras. So again, the story of Bathsheba, he got punished. The story of Uriah, of killing Uriah, and the story of the counting of the people, he personally didn't get punished. Now, okay, so let's stop over here. We'll just stop over here. Even though it's still part of this Gemara, and we'll continue tomorrow. It's interesting that we're talking about counting people, and when you count people, it brings diseases or ayin hara. It's interesting that this whole COVID-19 just comes on the heels of the United States Census. I find that interesting.
I thought about that when you were talking about it.
Yeah, if I was thinking about that, if I once heard the Yom Kippur War came right after they counted the Jewish people in Israel.
Does Israel do a census?
Yeah, everything is a shy. Yeah, they have all svarim written on it, how to do it or how to. I guess when you put things down on paper.
I census in the mail today.
Oh, you just got it in the mail.
I got it in the mail today. Yeah, I was like, "It's time ready for this." Yeah.
No, it was already. It was last year.
The census was last year.
That
I got something in the mail now.
Impossible. All right.
I'll take a picture.
That's why New York lost a seat because of the census.
Right. I got somebody that just stole my ID and filed for unemployment.
Yeah.
I just got a letter. Somebody used my name, my social security, and it's filing unemployment.
That happened. You have to get this website to go onto New York State and shut up.
Yeah, I did that, and I had to freeze my credit. Whatever.
Oh boy.
All right.
Well, how many Mexicans are living in the house in the corner? I mean, 300, 400? Like it's not fair to New York State to count them correctly, you know?
Yeah, right.
It's like 90 people living in that house.
Yeah. Anyway. Tomorrow night, tomorrow night, I don't think I'm gonna be able to have the computer up, but we'll have the Zoom up. I don't think there's any illustrations anyway, but I'm just gonna be, breaking away from a place, a family simcha. But we're gonna be learning tomorrow night on Zoom, so bring your own Gemaras, but we'll continue with this Agadata and then go on to the next Gemara, Mitzvah Shem.
Okay.
Okay, Zagazit, good night.
Oh man.